Hi, I'm live again. Starting to get used to this. So, today I'm back with a bit more of my story. I was thinking that um, my little boy, Benjamin, today he was saying, "Can I come and see when you're doing the live, Mummy?" And I said, "Well, when I'm a bit more used to it, yes, you can." And it made me think, why do we homeschool? Why do I want to work from home? Why do I want to be with my kids? And I just thought I'd tell you guys a little bit more about this. So when we had our first son, our eldest son, who's now 19, I had absolutely no plans to be a stay-at-home mum. I had a degree in psychology, and I wanted to work in. I wanted to set up a private practice as a psychologist, and yeah, I was all excited about that. And then our son came along, and I we had a system with my husband where I worked 50% and he worked, I don't know, about 80% or maybe even 90%, but he was able to look after our son one day a week. And then I had daycare, childcare for our son a couple of days a week, and then 1 or 2 days a week I looked after him. I can't quite remember how it was. Um, and that was the plan. I was a fairly young mum, and I had it all planned. I thought this is going to be great, and I'll kind of have it all. I'll have my job, and I'll have my child, and yeah, I'll do both together. And as many things with children, it didn't quite work out like that somehow. What happened is our son, he really liked going to his childcare place, but he began to get sick all the time. And he had weak lungs. It was his thing. And I later discovered that many children have their thing. Some catch ear infections, some have tummy bugs, some have lung things. So he was always catching bronchitis all the time. And so we would bring him there, he would have a couple of days, and then he'd start having a cold, and then within 24 hours he was coughing, and he had this sort of asthmatic bronchitis. He didn't have asthma, but the bronchitis gave him a kind of asthma, and he would not be able to sleep. And of course, the minute he was ill, I couldn't bring him to childcare, could I? So I would have to find a solution. And my mum never really helped me out an awful lot with the children. Anyway, she was still working at the time. So I didn't really have a solution. So I had to cancel work. And I was always faced with this thing where I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I not go to work, feel guilty about work, or do I somehow organize it so that I bring my child's fever down and I bring him to childcare anyway, and I feel terrible or awful about doing that? And it was really difficult, and he would just get sick all the time throughout the winter. He would catch a cold, it would go down to his lungs, he'd be on some kind of nebulizer and steroids and stuff. And it went on for, I don't know, a week or two, then he got better, then he went back to childcare, and then he caught the next cold, and then it started again. And it was just such a pain. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that, but it is just so awful because it's it's a never-ending thing, and he it's as if we never got any stability. You know, he was just really going from one illness to the next, and there couldn't be a routine, and therefore I couldn't really build up my work properly, and I couldn't really look after my child properly either, because I ended up, the first few times I thought, okay, well, children get sick, that's normal. But when it went on and on and on like that, and when then there was the first year, and then there was the summer, and then it was a little bit better, and then the second year. Okay, so for some reason I got cut off after 5 minutes. I'm not quite sure if that's what Facebook does after 5 minutes, so I'll go on with this. So I was just saying that by the time the second year came around, and our son started to get sick all throughout the winter again, and having to have quite aggressive treatment for his bronchitis every time, I started to feel terrible as well for him, because I started to feel this is just not good for him. The first year, somehow everybody told me children catch illnesses when they start daycare. That's normal. His immune system will get better, and somehow this will make him stronger. I don't know. People, I think, tried to make me feel better about it. But by the second year, when this was going on, I started to think this is just bad for him. And at the same time, I was very torn, because I kind of liked my work, and I kind of felt I was very much in this mindset that women have to go out to work, and that I had studied and I had gone to university, and I had to go out to work, and that staying at home somehow wouldn't be valuable. And then our son grew and gradually did get less sick, and we wanted a second child, and we started trying for a baby, and we tried and we tried and we tried and then we tried again. And 2 years after we'd started trying, I still wasn't pregnant. And it was very, very difficult. I'd always wanted a lot of children, and I fell pregnant very easily for our first. And 2 years is a long time when you want a child. I'm sure some of you know that. And I started thinking, this may not work. We may only have one child. And it's a long story. I won't give you all the details, because that will make a good story for another time, and one that I really want to tell you in a lot of detail another time. But today I'll cut a long story short, and I'll just say eventually I did fall pregnant, and when our eldest son was just a month before he turned 5, we had our second child, our daughter. And that experience of having our first child, who was in childcare while I was at work, and he was always sick, and then thinking it would be dead easy to have a second child, and actually waiting for a long time, years, before I fell pregnant, and then that, and then finally falling pregnant and having our second child, that really changed everything for me. It made me realize that I can't take anything for granted. I'd wanted a big family. I'd always wanted 4 children at least, kind of thing. And suddenly I had, during that long wait for our daughter, I had suddenly realized that I was lucky to have one child, and that I may never even have a second child. And then when our daughter came along and when she was born, it was just like, it was miraculous. I can't tell you, it was miraculous. And I went through this second pregnancy and this second newborn time with my newborn baby. I went through that time totally with totally different approach. I with totally different, not approach, but it was a completely different experience for me. Because everything was miraculous. I was taking nothing for granted. And it was absolutely wonderful. I can't tell you. It was really, really wonderful. So then it was time for me, you know, my maternity leave in Switzerland, we have very short maternity leave, and it's like 12 weeks, and the 12 weeks were gone, and it was time for me to go back to work. And I just, you know, everything started flooding back. I thought, I'm going to put this child in childcare, and I'm not going to be with her, and she's going to fall sick, and I'm going to feel I'm not doing my work properly, and I'm not looking after her properly either. And this is, I don't want to do this, you know. And I remember really feeling, I really, no, I don't want to do this. This was awful. And suddenly all the emotion that I'd had the first time came flooding, you know. It's like, it was awful. It was horrible to be torn between my child and my work. And I don't want to do this again. I really, really don't want to do this again. And I would like to say that this is when I made the decision not to go back to work, but actually it's not the case. I did go back to work because at that time I was working in my own private practice as a psychologist, and I had private clients who were, I'd been working with them before I gave birth, and I didn't feel I could just leave them like that. I didn't feel I could just, you know, send them an email and say, I'm not coming back to work after all. They were all expecting me to start working with them again. So I did go back, but we found a way with my husband that our daughter didn't have to go in childcare. Quite a few clients had left, had sort of stopped, had realized while I was on maternity leave that they were not that unhappy after all. So they said, oh, well, I don't really need therapy anymore, counseling. So I had fewer clients after my maternity leave than I had, you know, just before I gave birth. So I was able to put them all over one day, and then my husband looked after our daughter that day. So it was sort of okay. But yeah, so I went back to work. However, my heart wasn't really in it, and I kept feeling, you know, if I wanted to work properly, I had to advertise and get more clients and do this properly. I had to increase my hours and find childcare again for our daughter. And I just realized I could not do that. I could not do that. So I talked with my husband and he wasn't too pleased at the time, at the beginning, because that wasn't what we'd planned. That wasn't how we'd imagined. You know, things had to evolve in my head. I had to go from this place of, I'm going to have my career and have children, to actually, I just really want to be with my children. And that, of course, that was a whole big, that was a transformation I went through gradually while I was trying to have a second child. Then when I was miraculously pregnant, and when this child came into the world, and all these, you know, these few weeks of maternity leave I had with her, and then I went back to work, and all this it took me quite a while. Then I suddenly went to my husband and I said, John, I can't do this anymore. I have to be with the children. And of course, he was still in the mindset of, I don't have to work full time. We share the responsibility of earning money, and we share the responsibility of looking after the children. So I wouldn't say it caused conflict. We have quite a good relation, a very good relationship. So it was quite peaceful, but it was, we had quite a few discussions around that, because it was a big decision for me, definitely. Well, for us, for us. But we talked and we figured out the budget, and we figured things out. And that's how I left my job and I started to stay at home. I've already talked 10 minutes. It was another 6 minutes before, so this was quite a long live. I think I'll keep the rest of the story for another live. I will just add that I never, ever, ever regretted leaving my work and deciding to look after the children. I'm not saying everything was easy. It's not easy to be at home all the time. And it's definitely a lot of hard work to look after the children, especially when they're little. So, but this is just a little side note. If ever there's a mum watching this who's wondering, do I give up my job and stay at home, or do I not? I just really want to say that I never, ever regretted my decision. The only regret I have still now is that I didn't make that decision before. And honestly, I regret all those years that our son was in childcare, even though it was only part-time, and caught all these illnesses, and that I wasn't able to look after him the way I would have wanted to. That's my regret. But I've never regretted staying at home with all the other children and him. So with that, I will stop for now, and I'll say see you tomorrow.